Okay, so this is recording now. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, Jorge, can you just confirm that that's visible?
Yes.
Thanks very much. Okay, so welcome everybody to this talk today, Connecting Language and Content Creatively. And more precisely, we're going to be looking at the I in CLIL. If you don't understand what that means, hopefully that will become clearer to you. So first of all, a little bit about myself. My name is Jo. I am from the UK, from that red block there, from England. More precisely, I come from the county of Cheshire, which is between Liverpool and Manchester. And within that county, I am from a little village called Knutsford. I've been living in Spain for over 30 years now, and I work as a bilingual consultant, together with my colleague who's on the call today, in the editorial SM. So the main role that I have is that I work between the editorial and the schools. So I do lots of teacher training. We go into schools, we listen to the schools, and we take the information back to the editorial. So first little activity, just to keep you on your toes. What do you think this talk is going to be about today? Can you just write it in the chat, what you think we're going to touch on today? Okay, so is there anything there?
Yeah. Anna says integration. Maria thinks that it's connecting the surrounding reality and other subjects with English lessons. Virginia says creativity. CLIL, Celia. So those are all the answers that we got right now.
Great. Okay, lovely. Well, hopefully you will get a little bit of all that in this talk. So first of all, just looking at what you can see on the screen, this is a kind of activity that you can do with your students, asking them before you start a unit, posing a question, asking them what they think the subject's going to be about, and you can actually get them to create what we call a wonder wall, okay? You can see there's different types here. The one on the left, they're more personalized. You've got the students' faces with their speech bubbles, and they will just, fill out what they think. The one in the center, which is much more anonymous, where they just go up and maybe just collect words. And then the one on the right, which is divided into 3 different categories, and they have to go and stick post-it. So it's a different way of getting your students involved from the start in their classes. Because today I'd like you to take away a few ideas of things that you can put into practice tomorrow in your classrooms, if possible. So what are we going to look at today? We're going to look at what is CLIL. If you don't know what CLIL is, well, you're going to see, but we are just doing a very brief look at CLIL. If you do know what it is, I invite you to just rethink and be self-critical and see, do I really do all these things? Do I really manage to get this done when I'm teaching? We're going to look at what is quality and bilingual teaching, and what is integration? What is she on about with this integration business? And then how do we achieve it? How do we achieve all of this? Okay. So first activity, let's see if this works, because this needs a lot of technology. So my question to you today is, if you had a magic wand and you could change 2 challenges that you have in the bilingual classroom now, what would they be? So 2 challenges that you have. What you need to do is, I want you in your browser, put this address, this email address, and you will be invited to write your answers, and it's all anonymous, so just write your answers in there. Okay, so I hope that's clear. You put this in another browser, and write the answers to your 2 challenges. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that.
Joe, Ina is asking if she could copy and paste the address from your PowerPoint, but I don't think so.
I don't think so.
You
She
got-
would type it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Can you just tell me what you can see now? You can see me, yeah?
yeah.
Yeah, you on your screen.
No, not you, your screen.
Oh, you can see my screen. Okay. Okay, so can you see now the answer garden?
Yes.
Yes.
Good,
Yes.
wonderful, thank you. So once you're in, can you just type in your challenges?
But do we have to go online to that answer?
Yeah, if you can do, just open another tab.
Is it in the chat? The link? Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, you got the link on the chat. Yeah. So.
This might not work, I don't know. I'm hoping it will.
Yeah, it's working.
It's all an experiment. Has anybody written anything in it?
Yes, there are things written, and I don't know if writing myself because I'm not teaching in a bilingual school, so.
Oh, okay, all right. Doesn't matter.
With...
Lovely to have you here anyway. Okay,
Doesn't
so
have to be bilingual, right?
Maria did as well. So.
okay, so can you see my screen now? There we go. So we've got creativity not valued, unbalanced students, vocabulary, make students speak. This is one that comes up a lot. Teaching grammar, mixed ability classes, teach 3 subjects in 1, make students enjoy it, and too much grammar. Okay, so we can see there's a mixture. These are very typical challenges in the classroom. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation now. Okay, I think there's a little bit of background noise. Can you make sure all your microphones and your cameras are turned off, please? Thank you. That's it. It's gone. Okay. So you can see that is a tool that you could use in your classrooms. Okay. You can do it in several ways. You can either use it in the classroom. If you're allowed to use telephones, students can go on and do that. If you have tablets in your classroom, they can go and do that. You could give them it to go home. When they go home, they do it on their computers. You will be able to collect it, and then you can like bring it into the classroom the next day. So there's lots of different ways to use it, but it's a nice way of bringing technology into the classroom and getting children a little bit sort of engaged in the class. As you sort of, some of the challenges there are that difficult to get children motivated. So that's a nice tool that maybe you can take away with you. Okay, so let's have a look at what is CLIL. So CLIL is the methodology we use when we're doing bilingual teaching. And that is content and language integrated learning. That's what it stands for. And basically, we're teaching content through another language. In this case, it's English, okay? And it's all integrated. They're not taught separately. It's all integrated to create a real quality learning. So there are some principles we have to bear in mind when we're teaching. And the first one is, if you're in a bilingual classroom, let's imagine you're teaching science, the most important thing is to teach content, not the language. So what do we mean by this? This means that if I am teaching the planets and I ask Pedro a question about planets, and he maybe answers in Spanish, I ask the question in English, he answers in Spanish, or maybe he mixes the two languages and speaks half Spanish, half bit Spanglish. That's fine, because he is telling me the answer. And if the answer is correct, I know he's understood content. Yes, I have to indirectly correct him. I will make a mental note that, you know, he struggled to say that in English, but that's something he needs to work on. But that's something we really must remember. The content takes priority in a bilingual class. And fluency is more important than accuracy. You probably know yourselves from learning a language that, you know, if you're not afraid of speaking, then it's brilliant, because, you know, that's the most important thing with a language, to speak it and to be able to use it without feeling embarrassed. Accuracy will come later. And again, accuracy is something for the English language classroom, not the bilingual one. So it's much more important that they're just like using the language freely, or trying to use the language freely. Also in CLIL, we need to remember there's 4 main principles, and we call these the 4 C's, because they all begin with the letter C. So we have content. We're teaching curricular content. Communication. So a language is for communicating. So that's using all the skills to do that, which is the listening, the speaking, the reading, the writing. Then we have culture. There's a total different cultural aspect when it comes to languages. So if we look at Spanish and English, in Spanish you use a lot of imperatives. So dame, ven, dígame. And in English, we're much more flowery. You know, could you please lend me a pen? Could you come here? Excuse me, what was that? Can you tell me? Or, you know, we really go round the houses. And it doesn't mean one is right or wrong. It's just 2 different cultures. But what they need to understand is, if you were just to translate, so if you just translated from the Spanish imperative, for example, ven, come here, that could be interpreted as quite rude. So it's really important to teach those cultural aspects. And then the final one is cognition. And this is getting students to think about what they're doing. Not memorizing, not highlighting endless bits of text, but really getting them into the center of education and getting them to think about what the content is and what they're learning. And to do this, we need an integration of all skills. We need to take into consideration the 21st century skills. So, you know, nowadays you are teaching students that are going to come out of university or come out of school and probably go into jobs that haven't even been created yet. If we go back only 10 years, we didn't have digital marketing. We didn't have community managers for social media. And yet these students are going into these jobs. And so they've not been trained to do these things at school. But yes, if you have 21st century skills, then you can go into any job. Why? Because that is communication, being able to share your thoughts, to question things, to give ideas and solutions, to be able to collaborate, working together as a team and reaching a goal. Critical thinking, looking at problems in a new and different way, questioning things, and using their creativity, trying to get a new approach to something. If students can do this, then later they can get into any job, really. So this is a study that came up in a talk by David Marsh, and it's about meta-studies on how young people learn. And this is quite interesting when we think about young people today. So the brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. So images are just so important as a tool when it comes to bilingualism. Show them an image, we say an image is worth 1,000 words. They may not understand you if you ask them to read the text. They may not understand you when you speak to them, but show them a picture and they get it straight away. And that's what we want. We want them to understand it. 30% of our nerve cells are dedicated to sight. 30%. Only 8% are in touch and 3% in hearing. And if we think about the traditional way of teaching, where the teacher is always talking and the students are always hearing, well, and if we're just looking at text, then you can see we're just not maximizing the potential of our students to be able to learn. And after 72 hours, 10% is remembered from the classes, but 65% is remembered if we add visuals. So you can see, especially when it comes to bilingualism and we're using a second language, this is really, really important. So that's the little bit on CLIL. And now we're going to just do a little activity. So get ready. This is called an alphabet quiz. So bearing in mind that little bit of CLIL methodology that I've just been talking about, I'd like you to write a word that's relevant to what we've just seen. For example, then you'd write integration, because I was just talking about integration. So there you go, there's 3 more letters, C, F, and A. And can you just write it in the chat? And Jorge, could you just read them out as they come up, please?
Of course.
Thank you.
Communication, yeah, some people say Raquel, Anna. Collaboration,
Good.
Teresa.
Good.
Celia, content.
Fabulous.
Culture, creativity.
Culture, creativity. I'm getting all the C's. What about the F's and the A's?
Cognition.
Cognition, very good.
Memory, but that's not fluency. Feedback, fluency
Okay.
again.
Fluency, yeah, that was the one I was looking for, but feedback's a nice word. Anyone got the A?
Accuracy.
Accuracy. Very good. Okay, thank you very much. So again, this is a nice little activity you can do in your classes, just to break up the class when you're moving from one thing to another, or at the end of the class, if you want to do something, give them, some clues, some letters, and, ask students just to recall, certain things that they might have seen in the class. They all like quizzes and competitions. Okay, so now we're going to move on and look at quality. And we're looking at quality bilingualism. So bilingualism isn't just having a plaque on the front door of the school and yay, we're bilingual. It's what goes on behind the doors. What kind of quality are we giving them and what are we not? So again, I invite you to be critical about what goes on in your school and what goes on in your classroom, and just see if at the end of this talk you can say, well, I'm going to try something, just improve it a little bit. We can't go from doing one thing to another overnight, but you can just in baby steps just improve what you're doing. So as I say, me and my colleague Jorge, who's on this call today, we go into schools and we do coaching for teachers, we observe classes and work with heads. And a lot of the things that we're seeing, so I'm going to show you in the general part what we sort of see generally, and what we see if we take it one step further, which is where I want you to aim, okay? So, for example, if we're talking about ELT methodology, it's usually one that has a variety of topics that are not necessarily related to the curriculum, travel and pop stars and things like that. We have a traditional grammar exercises, and then we work through the vocabulary through the 4 skills, the reading, the writing, speaking and listening. However, if we could just take that one step further and have a methodology that takes into account linguistic progression, okay, that would make a lot more sense, because there are lots of gaps linguistically in a lot of what's going on in schools. It would be great if this methodology could integrate content of other areas. So, you know, if we're doing animals in science, it would be great to see that as well in the English part. It gives more exposure. And a methodology that puts the student into the center of the learning process. This is just so important, okay? They learn so much more when they have to go and hunt the information. So another question we ask teachers is when they're in the classroom, how much time do you speak English? And if we get a good answer, you know, or a top answer could be 80% of the time. Some people are very honest and they say to us only 50, or, you know, some say, oh, I have to translate because they don't understand. And we really, really encourage you to use English all of the time. So English being the lingua franca spoken in and out of the class at all times. So we need to remember that this is not translating, okay? And it's not just teaching the science or the art or whatever subject you're teaching in the English, but it's using that English all the time. So we really believe in one face, one language. I know some of you are going to say to me, if you're in a primary school, you're going to say, well, you know, I'm a tutor and I have to teach other subjects. So it's very difficult just to speak English all the time because I have to go into those subjects in Spanish. And there are ways of getting around that. So you set up boundaries, you maybe wear a hat or a badge and the times that you can speak English. In secondary school, you know, usually the teachers, they are the specialists in their subject and maybe they don't feel so confident with the English language. Again, the way to become more confident is to use it. And we use language differently. So when I'm teaching science, it's more of a technical sort of language that we're teaching them. But when I speak to them in the corridor or in the dining room, it's a much more colloquial language that I'm using, and they need all of that. So it's really important that we use English all the time, not just 80% of the time. Because once you start to translate into Spanish, that's it. They are so clever, these children. They go, hey, all I have to do now is sit here and wait till she gets frustrated, and then they will translate it for me. And that's not what we want.
Excuse me, Joe. Anna has got a question, yeah?
Yeah.
What if you're also their Spanish teacher and they come across you in the break in Spanish?
Yeah, okay. So if they come to you in the break and they're speaking to you in Spanish, that's fine. You keep talking to them in English, okay? This happens with children. Often,
even though if I teach them Spanish too, because I have classes with these students.
Yeah, that's right.
The teachers also they're Spanish.
Okay,
so I speak them in English, but they change in the break.
Okay, so yeah, like I said before, if you are the Spanish teacher as well as the English teacher, you need to set up boundaries and sort of, you know, if I wear this hat or if I wear this badge, or, you know, I will be, so if you wear that hat or that badge in your patio time or dining room, then they know that they can come and they will speak to you in English. If they come and speak to you in Spanish, you just insist with the English. That's fine. Sometimes children need time. So often they understand you, but they will just respond in Spanish. This is normal. It's their mother tongue. It's just about encouraging them. It's just about you continuing in English. It's the same with me. I have 2 children and I speak to them in English, but they were schooled here in Spain and, you know, their life is here. So their stronger language is the Spanish. So they will speak to me in Spanish, but I always speak to them in English. And believe you me, when they need something, they will come out with the English, because that's what happens usually. But yeah, it's just a case of persisting with it in English, okay?
Yeah, Maria is also saying there's the facts are, Anna, if you speak to them in English, eventually they will reply in English. Eventually they will do. Yeah,
they will.
And Anna says, that is what I do, and they laugh because they're not used to. Yeah, that's what Maria says, and obviously that's the reason. Yeah, and Maria concludes saying that the only way to get them into thinking in the eyes talking to them in English. Yeah, that's the only way. Yes, just to make them speak and speak in English.
Absolutely, yeah. If you do Yeah, just keep going with it because it will happen. And they may laugh at you at first because it's strange, but then they'll get used to it and they will just move between them. Okay, so yeah, I do invite you to try it and keep going with it. It's one of the challenges in bilingualism. Okay, so this is a very common thing. Okay, let's just move on. Teachers organise their subject material independently. And if you take it one step further to get really good quality, work as a team. I can't stress this enough. Coordinating with other areas. So in primary and infantile, teachers are sort of more used to working as a team. But working as a team doesn't mean just having a meeting once a month. Okay, it really means coordinating with other areas. So, if I am the science teacher and, I know the structures that are coming up in the book, and they need to know those language structures. So it's important that the English teacher works with me and can teach those structures so that when I'm teaching, they understand them. This is really, really important, the coordination between teams. If the English teacher's just doing her thing and the science teacher's doing his thing, then what's going to happen is children can easily get very confused. And this is one of the reasons why bilingualism is a struggle for students. And I'm going to show you a bit more about that in a minute. And finally, teaching, I see a lot in infantile. We see in pre-primary, we see them teaching numbers, colours, animals and shapes, because that's what's on the curricula. And then when we go into primary, we teach them the digestive system in English. And this is a huge struggle. If we could take it one step further, we would be exposing students to the content through different subjects several times a week from pre-primary. And I can't stress this enough. When you build a house, you build it from the bottom upwards. You need strong foundations. In bilingualism, it's the same. Children who are in pre-primary, they don't even dominate their own mother tongue yet. And what they do is they mix up the codes and they'll speak a little bit Spanglish, yeah? For them, it's not, this is just normal. They are just learning how to use these, because for them, it's just a code of communication. They don't understand about vocabulary and grammar and all this. So this is the perfect time for them to be exposed to language. Once they get older, and they control and they dominate their mother tongue, then they start to translate, and it becomes a little bit more complicated. So this is really important. And if we look at this slide, you can see often what happens in infantile, as I say, colours, numbers, shapes, and then in first to primary, we're doing the digestive system in a bilingual science class. And this is very frustrating. There's a big gap between the two. So what we strive to do, and in SM, we've managed to do this because we do have a methodology that does this. We want to achieve gradual progression so that students feel a lot more confident. Okay, let's have a look at the integration. So what?
Sorry again, Jo. Ina is saying that in her school they teach English, technology, and English at the same time with 3 teachers altogether. That's secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're integrating the 3 languages with the 3 subjects.
That's fabulous. That's the way to go. Yeah, that's the way to go. That's really good. Okay. So
it's really difficult, she says. Yeah.
Yes, it is difficult. It's probably new, yeah. And anything that's new and you're starting to do these things is difficult. Remember when you started to learn to drive? Oh my lordy, looking through that mirror, changing gears, your feet, your hands, it's all a nightmare. And now we get in the car, we don't even think about what we're doing. So, it is complicated. Anything new is complicated, but I really encourage you. You're doing the right thing. So keep going with it and you will get there. You will get there, I promise you. So what's the definition of integration? It's the combining of 2 or more parts to form a whole. Let's have a look at this. So if you look at the human body, we've got all these different organs. If you look at the one on the left-hand side. But these organs, they're not separate. They don't work separately. They all work together as one. It's the same machine. And we know this because if we look at the one on the right-hand side, where you've got the nervous system, And you know, when you're nervous, your mouth is dry, your heartbeat goes up, your gut is affected. Everything has an effect on everything. And this is what integration is. And it's the same thing when we're talking about bilingualism. It all works together as one. It's not an English class, a science class, we go home. No, it's all integrated. And so what is it exactly that we're looking at when we talk about integration? Well, first of all, it's the language, the content. We've spoken a lot about this so far, and the culture. Okay. Then we have to integrate the skills, the reading, the writing, the listening, the speaking, the 21st century skills, and different tools that we've got. So a variety of activities using digital tools, okay, and other tools that you've got, like cooperative learning, other different tools that you have at your disposal. So it's trying to achieve this integration. I'm not saying it's easy, but this is how it works. So I just want to show you an example of what we were talking about, getting that English and the sciences coordinated. So if you look on the right-hand side, this is a science class where Peter loves chocolate cake. Can he eat only cake and stay healthy? Now remember, I'm teaching content, so I'm concentrating on that. If Peter can eat cake and be healthy. But the child, the student, can't even start to answer if he doesn't understand the can he structure. So at the same time, in English, they need to be doing, or a little bit beforehand, they need to be doing that structure of can she dance. So this is EPS. We don't do ELT at the moment in SMA. We do EPS, which is English for Plurilingual Schools, and that's what we do. If you don't use our method, it doesn't matter. You just take your method and you just need to organize it in a different way so that it supports the bilingual subjects. Here's another example. Imagine we're doing vertebrates and invertebrates, and this is the question. What is the main difference between a snake and a worm? So the structure that I need there is going to be comparative. A snake is longer than a worm. A worm is slower than a snake, for example. So again, in English, that English teacher needs to know that they need to be working on comparing. And as you can see, they're not only just working on comparisons, but we're using animal vocabulary, which is what they're doing in science. We're not repeating what they do in science because that would be very boring, but we're just giving them more exposure in a different light, okay? So they're more exposure to the words they're seeing. The more times they see it, the more they're going to get it. So, how can we achieve this? First of all, working through blocks of content and not through units. So traditionally, we work through units. Again, separated, isolated. If we integrate them into blocks, it makes more sense for children. For example, the first block here, this term 1, is all about food. Food and nutrients, preserving, digestive system, diets, and food around the world. Probably in a normal book, that would be 2 units. It would probably be food and nutrients and the digestive system. 2 separate things. We've put them together because it all works together. Children understand it when it's all brought together as one. So this is something that is really positive, working through blocks of content. It makes more sense. Then we need to look at the questions that we're asking them when we're in class. So for example, what do you know about? Remember, children are not empty vessels, okay? They come with some kind of knowledge. So if we were looking at, for example, a balanced diet, and we ask them, what do you know about a balanced diet? See what they say. This is probably something that you do. I know lots of teachers do this. And then this one, not so much. What do you want to know? So, what do you want to know about a balanced diet? Now, doing this question, you're going to get the kids on board because they'll have their questions. Well, I want to know why, da, 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 da. And they're very creative. They've got very, very interesting minds, students, and they come out with some really interesting things. I mean, you do need to make sure you give them the answers, but if I'm a student and I want to know something about the planets, I am going to be listening, I'm going to be attentive in that class, I'm going to be participating because I want to know the answer to my question. So this is a nice one. And again, you could use that wonder wall idea at the beginning of this talk in order to get their feedback on that. So another thing we need to bear in mind is scaffolding. Now, scaffolding is really important when we talk about, you can't teach bilinguals, you can't teach a subject like a science subject like this one, invertebrates. You can't teach it in the same way as you would in Spanish because the students don't have the resources to be able to do that, and it's not translating. So what we have to do is we have to give them a support system, and that's what scaffolding is, a support system to help them learn. So for example, examples of scaffolding that we have here are visual support, videos and images. So here at the beginning, it says watch a video. So that will be a video which will help them understand what the unit is about. Making it very, very visual, you know, a big double page spread with some really attractive images on it. We've talked about images and the importance of them. So this is a way of scaffolding for them. They may not understand the word, but they'll get the picture. Then breaking up large blocks of text, okay? So this is much more manageable if I just have to read this. It makes me feel I've achieved something before I move on to the next block. So this is also a big help when it comes to bilingualism. Then thinking skills, posing thinking skills through questions. So here we have a pause box and we're asking some questions. In this case, they ask questions about what they've seen before, because if none of the students can answer this question, me as a teacher, I know I need to explain it in a different way because they've not understood it. And that doesn't mean translating. We don't resort to translation because, as I said before, you've lost them then. They'll wait always for you to translate. So if we've studied this, they've not understood it, I need to think of a different activity, use a different medium in order to get them to understand it, okay? But also asking them questions that will help them to think and use that cognition. This is really important. Then we need to awaken curiosity. Again, this is linking into the motivational side of it. And you can introduce fun facts. We introduce it like this. But give them some fun, even if you're not using our books, you can create fun moments in the classroom where you pose questions, ask them to go away and research something, come back. And it might be something, you know, a little bit fun, a little bit sort of, a little bit more juicy than the most, you know, the regular curricular stuff, but it will get them involved and interested. And then finally, we must work the skills, the listening and speaking. So it's not just about the reading and the writing, it's about the listening and speaking skills. So here in this one at the end of the unit, you can see that they have a listening activity and a speaking activity. But this applies as well in, you know, classes like arts and crafts, where, you know, it's not just the colouring, it's not just the cutting, the pasting, it's also the speaking and listening in that language that they're learning in that's important. So we need to use and we need to integrate all these different types of things. So here's another activity. Now, this is, can you guess the city? So again, write your answers in the chat, but this is just another nice way. So if we go back to, you know, if we were introducing a subject, this could be an activity that you could use to get them motivated from the start. So I'm going to reveal this picture little by little, and you're going to guess which city is it. Anybody got it?
London.
London,
From
no.
Edinburgh. Yeah, somebody said.
Yes,
Maria Isabel. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgive you for saying London. Yeah, I can get if you why you got that, because the style of buildings are very similar. It's very close, but it is actually Edinburgh. Yeah, and so once you've done that activity, then you could start to ask them questions about the picture. You know, what can you see on the, you know, the top right hand side? What colours are there? What I don't know, depending on the subject you're in and what you're doing at the time. But you could really exploit a visual like that and ask them questions, or get them to work in pairs, do a pair activity about that. There's a lot you can do. But first, getting them engaged in it by using some kind of activity. Also look at practical ideas that you can use to get the student in the center of that learning. Again, you know, the teacher role now is more to be a coach. You know, if a student, you know, let's face it, and it's, you know, Google is more up to date than we are. Google is quicker than we are. But what we do need is we need to be able to coach children to understand what information is valid, how to use the information they're finding. So our role as teachers is changing a little bit. So the days of just explaining it in the class, they go away and they do their homework, that has to change, and especially in bilingualism, because they will just zone out. So an idea is, if we were to look at this here, and we have a task to look at the maps below and explain why they're different. So we could talk about this a little bit in class. We could ask students questions. We could explain the task to the students. And we could tell them we want them to go home and we would like them to explore maybe these 2 questions that are here. So in the class, they get the instructions, we go through the activity, we brainstorm, maybe include a couple of activities. They go home and individually they're going to explore a couple of questions, find out a bit more information, and then come back into class again, and we get them together in some groups and they can exchange information that they've learned and put it together in some kind of project, some kind of activity that you've prepared before. That is taking this teacher away from that speaking all the time in the class, which can be a lot of pressure, especially if you don't feel confident in the language, okay? And it's getting them to use those thinking skills, those 21st century skills, because again, they'll be communicating together in their groups. And this is a really lovely way for students to learn, and it makes a bigger impact on them. They will retain more information by learning this way. We also need to consider resources for reviewing. So, you know, we still get teachers asking me for the worksheets for reviewing. Where are the worksheets for the, to review the subject we've just done? We're moving away from that, and we're trying to make it a lot more playful, because even adults, so this is valid even if you're in secondary school and, you know, bachillerato in university, or if you're teaching adults, I mean, this is relevant. We all love to play. There's a child in all of us, and, you know, we have fun, so we relax and we remember. And that is what we want them to do in class. So, for example, we use, for example, board games, and you can see here, they would start here on this plank, and then they have to move across the ice, and they have to get to the igloo. And they do that through questions. But not all the questions are related to what they've been doing in the subjects. Okay, so it's good fun for them. So I'm sure many of you do use games. We're going to do a little game now. So this is where you need your pen and your paper. I'll give you a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you something, and you're going to draw it. So I'm going to give you instructions, and I want you to draw it on your piece of paper. Okay? So here we go. Draw the outline of a man from his knees up, putting his shoulders at the canvas's vertical and horizontal center. I repeat that. Draw the outline of a man from his knees up, putting his shoulders at the canvas's vertical and horizontal center, or the papers, in your case, vertical and horizontal center. Put a beige wall behind him. Up, the wall goes up just above his wrists. Colour, it doesn't matter if you haven't got colours for this activity today, but imagine. Colour the rest of the background blue for the sea up to his elbow, and grey with clouds for the sky above. Put him in a buttoned black jacket over a white shirt with a red tie and a hat. Draw a green apple floating in front of his face. So those are the instructions. You'll have drawn something. I would love to do this in a classroom with you because I would be able to see it easier, see what everyone's come up with. That's quite difficult doing it like that. So I might want to give them some more support. And the way I can do that is I can say, I'll go over the instructions again, but you can read them this time. So that's what you can do now. So draw the outline of a man from his knees up, putting his shoulders at the canvas's vertical and horizontal center. Put a beige brick wall behind him, up to just above his wrists. Color the rest of the background blue for the sea up to his elbow and grey with clouds for the sky above that. Put him in a buttoned black jacket over a white shirt with a red tie and a hat. And draw a green apple floating in front of his face. And then finally, we reveal, did you get anything like that? I'd love to know. Please put it in the chat.
Well, yeah, no, you don't want to see it. Yeah, so yeah, well, she got it right. Yeah, so yes,
Okay.
almost, no, very close, more or less. So yeah.
Okay. So obviously this was done in an art class because this is they're studying this painting, The Son of Man by René Magritte, 1964. But you could use this in any class. Imagine if you were doing the planets. You could do a lovely activity with this, you know, with the planets, the way they're positioned to the left, to the right, they're bigger, they're red, they're blue, whatever they are, okay? Apply this to any activity. You could, instead of you having to read it all the time, you could put them into pairs. And one person reads it, the other person has to draw it, okay? And as I say, you can scaffold the activity by just reading it first. That's the hardest. And that's when they're probably feeling more lost. But then give them the written thing. And then they can say, because sometimes when they see it, they go, oh, I did understand that. Or, oh gosh, that's what she was meant and what she was saying, okay? And then finally, you would give them the painting. So this is another nice activity. It incorporates all the most of the skills, especially if they're doing it in pairs and they're speaking, yeah, because then they're reading. Drawing as well. Lots of students flourish if they can draw, and you know, not every student is great with text. Okay, so this is a fun way of getting them to maybe review, or you could do this in many contexts. Okay, so also we need to integrate parents and language assistants into this equation. So I don't know how many of you work with language assistants, but from schools that I go to, teachers really struggle with language assistants, and it really does need to be thought out really well, because language assistants, the teachers say, oh, you know, they come and they don't know what to do, they haven't a clue. Yeah, the language assistant is the expert in the language because they're native, so they're fluent. They are not an expert in the classroom. For many of them, it's the first time they've ever been on the other side of the desk in a classroom because they're usually students. But yes, they come from different cultures. They've been educated in different ways. So often they come with lots of different ideas for games, for projects, things that they've done. They also come with a load of information about their culture. You know, I was in a classroom where there was a perfect working of teacher and language assistant, and the teacher, you know, he brought the bit of culture from Australia. He was from Australia into the class and showed children things, and then the teacher would take over, and they used to work as an act together. They would do different things. The teacher is the expert in the classroom. You guys are the ones that know your students, you know how to teach them, you know about methodologies, you're the experts in the classroom. So if you can combine and learn how to work together, then you have a brilliant team, and it really, really can work and be so beneficial for students. It's untrue. So because lots of schools do struggle with this, we do have an assistance guide in all our methodologies to help you with that. We also provide, and if you don't do it already, I mean, you should be doing it, some guide for parents in bilingualism. So many parents, they say, oh, I don't speak English, I can't help my student. But when we're talking about bilingual students, they don't need to know the English. You know, if we're talking about, you know, the water cycle and the student doesn't understand it, the parents can explain that to them in Spanish. Yes, they will need to go away and do the activity in English, but, you know, for them to understand, remember, they need to understand, then that's absolutely fine. And so what we do is, you can see here these like lovely visual maps. We do these in English for the teacher as a poster and in the books for the students, but we also put it in Spanish for the teacher. We give it to the teacher in case a parent would like to have it in Spanish. So if you don't use our methods, it doesn't matter, but that's a nice little thing to do for your parents and get them, you know, involved in their child's learning. So we're just going to close now, and I want to leave you with another activity which I think is useful in the classroom. And under normal circumstances, well, I'd get you to maybe do this about this talk, but I've chosen not to do that. I thought I'd just explain. This is called a Freya model. I don't know if any of you use it, but basically you put in the center of the model the subject or a word or something that you've been doing, and you ask the students to define it in their own words. In their own words is important, you know, because you don't want them copying from the book. Just what did you understand by this? Get them to list some of the characteristics or some of the facts that they've seen today. How many can you list? Give them some examples from their own life of how that works, or you could, if it's a word, you could ask them to use it in a sentence. And look, this is a lovely one here, an image. Get them to draw it. Again, as I said before, some students flourish being able to draw things. This is an example of how you could use it in your class. So if you were doing the food chain, so, you know, here they've defined it, here they've done some characteristics, and they've done them in different colors as well to make it more attractive. Here are some examples, and here is an illustration. So again, this is a really nice way to check if your students have understood what they've been doing in the project, in the unit, in the class. And this also is really useful for the students when it comes to revision. Yeah, they can, and you could use it if a student is struggling with a concept they don't understand. It can be, if you help them by using this, it makes it a lot more visual for them, and then, you know, it's easier for them to understand it. So that's a nice activity to use as well. So let's just summarize what we've looked at today. So what do we want to integrate? We want to integrate language, content, skills, tools, culture, your team, your other teachers, and your parents and language assistants. How do we integrate to achieve quality? Well, we need to use scaffolding. It's better to use blocks of content, coordinate with other areas in your year, in your school, use a variety of activities and tools, maximum exposure to the language. So that means not just in the science, but in the other subjects that they're doing. It also means inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And here I've just given you some useful links and resources, which I hope will give you some great ideas for games and activities. In fact, if I click on this one, hopefully you'll see this. Can you see that screen coming up? Yeah, so this is how to be an interactive teacher, 20 interactive lesson activities. So lots of activities here, just to give you some idea, because as teachers, we do run out of ideas over time. So either take a photo of that, or I will probably be sending this to the school and they'll be putting it up in your resources anyway, so don't worry about it. And that brings us to the end. So thank you very much for listening. You've got my email there. So if you do have any questions, or if you do feel you need some help and we can be of any assistance in any way, please don't hesitate to get in touch. You know, we're here to support teachers, and I just have to say you're doing a fabulous job. I mean, you really are essential workers at this moment in time. You're working in very difficult conditions. You've had to work incredibly quick and adapt to different circumstances at the moment. And really appreciate you coming on this talk today, because your time is very, very valuable and you're doing a great job. So I don't know if everybody's got...
Excuse me, Jo?
Yeah.
Could you please go back to the last slide, please? Because they like to take a picture. They like to get the presentation, but, you know, I said that I don't know, but what they can do is email you and you'll send it to them.
I'll probably send the presentation to, yeah, you can email me privately, or I can send it to the college and they can put it in their resources. So whatever's easier for you guys, no problem, I can give you this. And there you go, that's that final slide. Feel free to take a photo. And
It's not on.
Oh, is it not on?
No.
Oh, okay. Let me have a look. Okay, not sharing. Okay, is it on now?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Well, yeah, it's been really cool. Thank you so much. Really interesting. So yes, all very positive comments. Great presentation. Thank you very much. Yeah, everybody thanks you. An awesome presentation. So.
Okay, well, I really hope it's useful for you, because I think, you know, you do need, sometimes we need some inspiration, don't we? And we need, and you know, what I want is for you to be able to go out in your class and, you know, with a few ideas that are new that you can sort of try and practice, adapt, make them your own, play around with them. So if there's no questions, well, if you think of any questions later, as I say, you can always just email me, and, you know, we're here to help you. So thank you very much. Oh, look, it's 29 minutes past, so we've done it really on the dot. So please disconnect. That's enough screen time for today. And go and have a lovely evening. And hopefully we will meet again soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.